but you identified most of the support for communism in the Crowsnest Pass as coming from a practical standpoint. However, volunteers to the Spanish Civil War, fundraising campaigns for the workers in the far-flung Soviet Union, and RCMP reports to a more widespread ideological engagement. How deeply do you think locals engage with leftist ideology beyond practical politics?
Well, there were ideologues, without question, but they were just a tiny, tiny proportion of the membership of the Communist Party, let alone the voting, their voters. You know, the membership numbers during the Second World War, towards the end, when communism was not a dirty word, because the West was allied with the Soviet Union in fighting the Nazis. You know, there were over 100 members of the Communist Party when you went from Lundberg over to Fernie, to Coal Creek. And some of them were true ideologues, you know, they were Marxists. They read their Karl Marx and their Lenin and so on. And but even in my research, I've identified 7 volunteers who went to Spain in the 1930s, and they were young people, young men, and I bet you they were not the ideologues. I think they were caught up in the enthusiasm for the moment, because it looked like the fascist powers were going to be overrunning the democratic world, and people had to unite in order to stop them in their tracks in Spain. So it was the fight between the democratic elected Republican government and a military fascist movement that was Spanish, but was supported by Italy and by Germany with their armaments. So, you know, like there were German planes that were bombing the positions of the Spanish Republican side. So all across the West, there was this idea that it was kind of like a final conflict between, you know, freedom, democratic freedom, and the authoritarian fascism. And so the young people would go. So I would say that they were the pragmatic types, but they weren't the ideologues either. They were just young people who were enthusiastic. And remember that the condition of young people in the 30s was really bad, because when you finished school, if you got your grade 8, or you might have got your grade 10, or if you were lucky, you went to college or something, but there were no jobs. It was really hard to get work. And so you could understand why they would get enthusiastic about a movement that was going to save the world. I mean, that would be sort of like the way that many young people have been involved in environmental movements in the last decade. Because it seems like if we can't decarbonize our economy, that the world is actually going to burn. So similar. So I would say that the ideologues probably played a key role in organizing these young people to go to Spain. And hopefully the young people went to Spain with their eyes wide open, because they were putting their life on the line. In fact, 4 out of the 7 from the region died in Spain. And that was quite similar to the loss of life from all of the Canadian volunteers who eventually joined the Mackenzie Papineau Battalion, which is the Canadian battalion in Spain. The Crowsnest Pass, the picture that we should have of it, which comes from one of the oral history interviews that was done in the 80s with Mr. Erickson, who was a miner and then became a lumber mill owner. There were a few red, but about half the population was pink. So they were socialistically inclined. And, but they would support the Communist Party up until the Cold War, because the Communist Party was the party that was doing stuff. They were the ones who were leading the unions. They were the ones who were putting forward the policies that would help miners and miners' families. And if you're destitute, then you're looking for the movement that was standing up for you, and it was the communist movement that was doing it. Communism was important in the Crowsnest Pass, but that doesn't mean everybody had Lenin's collected works on their bookshelf.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.